Okay, so welcome. We got 46 people. That's a big crowd. Normally we get like 25, 30 people. So this seems to be a interesting topic here. The way I'm going to do it, and I saw the Heart River people did this. They made a movie. Well, even the Wind people. They made a movie. So play the movie that I put on YouTube already. It's about 20 some minutes long. And I'm going to talk over it a bit. And I guess Brian and Mike and whoever else was on the trip, if you want to just jump in every so often and say something, that's fine. And then try to hold your questions to the end. And then at the end, I have a small presentation that's more on the
is being recorded.
Of, cost, distance, what do we do every day, etc., like that. So that will be more of the logistics side of it. And then I have a third item, which is like a Parks Canada guide that I'll just scroll through, and we'll talk through some of that a bit. That's very helpful if you're doing a trip. Okay, so right now what we'll do is we'll kind of mute quite a few people here, if I could figure out how to do this. Mute all. And if you want to talk, you have to unmute yourself, I guess. Okay, I'm good. That's good. Okay. So we've got the chat. We got a few things. Okay, and we got that. Okay, so Ian's going to be working that background stuff, letting people in and stuff. I am going to start sharing my movie here. If I can figure out where I'm going here. Okay, I'm going to click this. And I'll just be talking over the movie here. Let me see. I got to get my screen sorted out here. I got too many things happening. Is this the one? Okay. Just give me a second here, folks. It's always a challenge with the screens. I got two screens, so it's like complicated. All right, can people see the kind of the Wilderness Canoe Association screen? Okay, good. And am I like off to the side, or you just hear my voice? We're good? Okay. Okay, I'll start playing the movie and I'll just, talk over it a bit. What's the volume?
Volume's okay.
Okay, good. So this is flying in. You can still see there's snow in the mountains. And
Get some action shots here.
we landed at Divide Lake, which is the headwaters of the
Tents looking out that way, and it
Broken
was
Skull.
amazing.
So this is our first day after landing and setting up.
Larry.
Oh, Larry. He's also really good at capturing.
There's a few flies, but they're not really bugging us.
You just have to look at the Snake River video and it's like, oh,
We got Mike and Brian I saw there. Just turn up the volume here a bit. Beautiful landscape. This lake was frozen over 2 weeks before, and we actually were swimming in there with no issues. You can see the snow in the mountains.
Climbing Fossil Ridge.
We just hiked up this thing called Fossil Ridge, which is just behind our camp. So we're about 500 vertical meters above our camp.
There's our camp.
That's our camp down there. And they call it Fossil Ridge because as you walk, you'll see a bunch of fossils.
How was that? It's not too bad, eh, with the breeze?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. No bugs. Full sun.
Put a beer in the lake overnight.
Yeah. Now I find one like this, but half the size.
Not this week.
There's the fossils.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
And we're also at the top of the mountain with this one. Amazing.
Amazing stuff. Top of the mountain. Well, halfway up the mountain. We didn't quite get to the top, but we're up there.
Yeah, we got tons.
That one's too big.
Top was 4.3K from the camp. Crow flies. And it was 2308 or something up there.
2308 meters above sea level.
Wonder if they can see us. Ow.
We got to do a snowball fight here, mini one. It's July the 2nd at this, or July 2nd at this point.
Almost a few seconds of this. All right, we're exiting Divide Lake. Divide Creek.
So we're heading down
Pretty
Divide
good.
Creek. It's about 3.5 K to get to the actual Broken Skull.
Still rubbly, but
We paddled, I would say, a good
to the bank,
90% of this. It was
Right to the bank?
parts that we had to get out and
like
walk. But, you know, not very far. Maybe 20, 30 meters. And then paddle half a K.
Next time.
Get out again.
Robbie up
Wearing
top
dry
there.
suit.
yeah.
So about 2K down the creek is waterfall. We had the portage around. It took us 5 trips to get all our gear around this. 150 meters.
Great.
It's a tight section. We decided to line the ropes down.
Camp number 2. We're just tearing down right now.
So this is the next morning. We've got,
What's the
because
name
of
of this
COVID,
rapid?
we almost had one person per tent.
Thank you, Rapid. And the other one was Swallow
About-
Falls?
Yes.
I think there was maybe 3 of us that were teamed up. So 6 of us.
Which side of the big rock?
Follow Rebecca.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's shallow beyond
The
it.
water is crystal
Yeah, that's
clear.
all gravel bar.
You can see rocks coming up like 50 meters in advance.
Even this is gravel bar.
The rocks were all,
Oh well.
We gotta get
you
over
know,
right.
terracotta kind of rocks.
Okay.
You can see them.
Back in the flow. Oh, that looks pretty. Okay, here we go.
That's all good.
If you're paddling in Quebec, Ontario, the water's black. the
Nice and
rocks
deep
are
here.
black. But this is just beautiful. And you can look up ahead and see the white. There's a rock.
Yeah, it
and
looks
when
like
you
a
get
big
close,
S
you can
turn down below.
exactly see the side you go on.
So we're
Actually,
gonna.
that's the main river, Gary.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Okay, let's get over to the right of it. Cross over a bit.
So we're, I think,
Oh, the other
one
way.
of the first
Keep the
down
water
this
on the
river
right.
Okay.
this year. Because the ice just
Couple
came off
boulders to go around, but
weeks before. So I think maybe one or two, maybe one group came before us, but
And those big boulders, we'll try and swing right
we're
in
one
front
of
of
the
them.
first groups.
okay. Back to the left.
Yeah.
Okay, we're doing it.
The water's only like 6 inches deep here, so we just kind of wobble through.
All right.
The rocks
Oh,
are very
that's the main
round.
river. Broken Skull, dead ahead. I thought it was a switchback.
Yeah, I know, I thought, then I noticed the turn was wrong.
So my partner was
There's a
Yuri
rock on the
Miller,
right.
and
Yeah.
every day we
Okay,
flip
let's keep this
positions.
going over a little bit.
I'm in the bow right now.
That's it. Might hit.
Yeah.
Wow, there it is. Broken Skull.
Here we go.
So at this point, we're 3K into the trip.
That must have been the
We've got
gravel bar.
480 to go to. We've done the Broken Skull and then the South. The actual river
All right,
headwaters
Eddie,
are
left of the
about
wave
20
train.
kilometers up the river. But because the plane has to drop this
Watch that rock on the left there.
Gary, the video sound is a bit too loud to hear your
Left
narration
again.
voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big rock.
Yep.
Not sure how to fix that.
Follow
What's that?
Rebecca's line. There's a rock on the left.
Hey, take it down
This
a little
is
more.
good.
A little more.
See the steam coming out of the rock?
Oh yeah, sun.
All right, thanks for the
Yeah.
feedback. like I said, beautiful country, the scenery, the
All right.
vistas. You can kind of point yourself and walk and hike. This is typical
There's
of the
another
river.
feature
This is the
sweeper.
Broken Skull. Broken Skull is 110K total, and it's all kind of like this.
Oh, there's a pizza sweeper there. It's a roller coaster ride down. Yeah, you can see there's a lot more sweeper action happening. You gotta be careful.
So I don't know what happened here, but I ended up in the stern. So I don't know. We must have had lunch, and I jumped in the stern for some reason. Usually we stay in one position for the day. Something happened.
Yeah, we got some nice
Nothing bad,
sunlight
but-
here. Water's looking really nice.
You can see how fast we're motoring. We're not
That
doing
turquoise
anything. We're
color.
just kind of like pointing ourselves.
Kind of ice field fed.
And this is the extent of the rapids for the most part. It's just like class 1.5. There's nothing over the top or anything. This is, I'd say, the most on the Broken Skull. And even this, I would call it 1.5 because there's nothing to go around really. Just like little riffles of wave trains. But there's nothing really to deviate around or anything. You're not gonna wipe out on
Big
anything.
valley.
So here's a creek coming in from the left. So you just gotta point your boat to get that current. You can see how fast it's motoring here. Like we're coming in pretty hot, so we're trying to paddle back up.
Okay,
the
we're
river.
going in here. Whoop. Or maybe below them. We'll go below these guys.
You came in nice and gentle. Watch my paddle.
Okay, now we can go in.
Camp 3, White Wolf Creek. So White Wolf Creek is
That's
the
a
creek
rock
you
down
see
there.
across the river there,
And,
coming in from the Inner Valley.
color rocks in front is where the rock.
And we've
falls.
crossed the river. We're camped just on the other side of the river,
4,
and we're hiking up
5.
this mountain.
So it's come from that valley up there where the snow is.
So you see where Rebecca is? She's in a divot where a rock fell off the mountain
I know how to take a
and
photo
bounced
myself.
like 10
I just
meters
look
at a time all the way down
Olivier's
the
glasses. Can you go
mountain.
up a higher?
And as it
That's
bounced,
it.
it turned up like a different kind of dirt on the bottom.
There's a song from
versus
Jack
the top.
Johnson that goes exactly like that.
Are you gonna go higher?
Pictures.
We're on a little snowpack here.
Yeah, see, it was so good.
Do it again.
So good that night.
So we're only like probably a third up the mountain. Beautiful flowers. My wife likes this part. So we're heading back down. There was a couple people that stayed in camp, they didn't hike, and they actually said when we got to the top of the mountain, some bear came running across here. So we must have scared something from the top.
Looks like we're heading for that slide zone.
Rocky terrain.
Like this side you can see the rain. Like,
All right, so we're back in camp,
I like this side.
and this storm rolled through.
Oh, that was a big one.
So you see the lightning strike. So it all happened around us. We didn't really get wet or anything. It just all in the mountains around us. This White Wolf Creek Valley.
That, Gary, we were very fortunate with the weather. And the first 2, 3, 4 days, it was actually warm. It was 24, 25 degrees and humid. And we got these thunderstorms around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on those first few days.
Right.
So all
Brian,
that
you could tell them
water
about the
came from that
brown
valley.
water versus the
And it's
clear
filled up
water.
with a pile of,
Okay.
I guess, sand.
So
and
over
silt
here
and
on the
stuff.
right is the
So now you
White
get a
Wolf
mixing going on.
Creek
Before
coming
it was
in. And when we got there, it was crystal
blue,
clear.
both sides.
The storm further up the valley, and about
Lots of
an
sand
hour after the
mixing with
storm
the
passed through,
Broken Skull.
it went from that clear blue water on the far side of the river there to this sort of chocolate cream color. And it was that color all night. We wake up the next morning and it was back to clear water again. So it was just a runoff from the thunderstorm upstream of the creek.
Back on the water. So this area
Probably
here
go to the
is
right of
called
it, maybe?
Avalanche Alley or something like that.
Okay, I guess we're okay.
So there's like a section of, if you look at the topographical maps, it just
We'll
shows
stay on the right of it a bit.
But this is the extent. It's not getting more violent than this. And this is just rolly kind of stuff. Like it's
Back paddle a bit, slow us down so they get ahead of us.
and up ahead, there was an avalanche at one point that almost
Now
blocked the
watching
river.
everybody.
Which was
Not bad. We're on the edge of the right side of it. You guys
So
look
you
good.
just kind of, you can avoid the big stuff. See,
You wanna
here,
cut with these guys?
river and the big stuff's over on the left a bit. You can go to the right, you can go to the left. You got lots of river to play with,
Got
get
it.
around stuff.
Better slow her down again.
There's a few rocks.
Oh, boat over.
This is one of the things I like, Gary, about the river on the right-hand side. You see how close the
Let's go
mountains
to the
are.
right of the big rock.
You're literally 300, 400 meters, and it's right there. The mountain starts. So the landscape is so dramatic and so close.
So one of the
Brakes
interesting
on.
things here, when you do have a wipeout, you're going to be going. The water's not deep. It's like 3-4 feet deep, but it's moving at 10K an hour.
We're gonna lift it.
So it sometimes
Water's
takes a
gonna
little
flow in
while to
between
get on
the skirt and
shore.
the canoe. Okay, and we're all gonna hold it in the air, and then our side is gonna flip it over to you. So
This is the
at one
advantage
point
when you
guys
have
just
about
let
10
go,
people
and then
around.
we'll
You can
flip
just
it
pick up
over.
the whole boat.
Okay.
Immediately.
1, 2, 3.
So we
Watch
did
your
this
back.
power lift, which wasn't that hard, and then we just kind of rolled it over.
Everybody okay? Not too heavy?
No.
All the boats had
Let's tilt a
spray
little bit
scripts
to your
on them.
side to make sure there's no more water. And then you guys.
So enlighten
we'll
us,
flip
why
it
did that
on
boat
3.
flip?
1, 2,
I mean, it's
3.
easy to do if you're not paying attention. What did those guys do?
Well, let's see. It was JC and who was teamed up with JC?
And I think it was me that day.
Was it? So what did you do, Brian?
Landslide alley.
Good question. I remember I was in the bow of the boat, and I don't remember anything out of the ordinary. And the next thing all I know is we were at 45-degree angle, and
Yeah,
off we went.
I think I saw some white stuff
They
in
went
front of
right
you,
under the
and you
log.
probably rolled over a big round rock and just went into a hollow.
It
And
went under something.
that's what it is.
That
So
little
the
twig,
interesting thing here was there was a lot of braids.
they just swept
We
it
were kind of
themselves.
going to side braid because we wanted to go to a hot spring. So all these braids, have
Yeah, my rear
sweepers
end
or
got more.
potential sweepers. So you can see this one is like potential. I can duck under it, but the current's trying to push you there. Now Mike and one of the guides, Olivier, were following us, and they are
Yeah, we're
right
good.
behind us right now. So if I look back, there they are,
Okay.
and they're
Caused an
heading
issue back there.
diagonal or whatever to the sweeper. So Mike, you can
Okay,
chime
pull us
in now.
into
What
the back of the
happened?
boat.
Yeah, so the boat in front of us capsized, so we were on our way to rescue,
Coming in hot.
and there was another canoe in front of us, so we got pushed into a sweeper on the
They
outside
got
of the
stuck. They
curve,
were too close to
and
us.
both of us were pinned against a tree. So the current was pushing us right into the sweeper. Fortunately, the branch was hitting me right at my chest where my life jacket was. If it was about 3 inches higher, it would have decapitated me.
Mhm.
So how we got out was we just broke all the branches ahead of us and went forward. That was the only scary part for me.
Yeah, so you just got to be careful. What the guides told us is that they should have pulled out beforehand.
Yeah.
But, lesson learned.
It's a hearty bread.
Yeah.
And we were on a guided trip, so, excellent food. Nice flowers again. So this camp is, we took this outer braid to get close to this hot spring. It was about a 2K hike in, and again, we're hiking up a different creek now, and we're all sitting on a snowbank right now. And this is the hot spring, and I believe that's you, Mike.
Oh, I'm happy here. I'm really
Yes, it
happy
is.
here. This is great.
So Mike,
I'm
what's the
Japanese.
temperature
I'm
like?
Japanese, so going to a hot spring for me is like going home. It's like onsen. It's where Japanese people spend half their life. So I was quite happy
Kind
there.
of red snow ice.
All right, so then a little high point. The snow has got a red tinge to it, and that red tinge is like a red bacteria on the top of the snow. Heading down the river some more. So, like I said, the river's all like this.
Canyon.
We're getting to this thing called the mini gate. It's from Henry there. Mini gate is like a takeoff from the South Nahani where you have the gate. Similar kind of S turn. So back in the bow. We did flip some partners around. I guess people were getting bored after a while, so we started flipping partners.
Yeah, I took a movie.
Oh, that was like an inch.
There's Mike rolling in.
F1 race car. Yeah, precision.
We had we had 14 people on the trip. There was a lot of potential with flipping different partners, different days, different positions. You can see the wave train here. You know, we're trying to avoid it, so it's very easy to avoid things. You don't have to avoid it. I mean,
Maybe
just
to the
head
center.
for it because they want to have fun.
Yeah.
There's nothing really that can get you in trouble and grab a boat or something. All the
That was a
rocks
rock,
are
right?
round and they're like quite low. So even if you hit them and did a wipeout, your boat's just going to bobble over them. I would say the whole river, I don't remember any rocks that would pin a boat. It would be more the sweepers you'd have to watch out for. And that's generally at the top end. 2/3 down or halfway down all the way to the bottom. It's not as many sweepers. So we get through the routine every morning, wake up, pack up the boats, put the cover back on. That's about an hour and a half effort.
Whoa,
We saw
big
if we had a
wave
day
up
off
ahead.
and we do a
let me
hike
know what's
day.
going on here. I'm gonna try to
Generally
Take it
we're
back,
motoring
yeah.
along.
to the right quick after that dock thing.
Yeah. After these white waves, then we go.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Rebecca, my
I'm gonna
daughter's
try to hug
turning
those as much as I
now.
can.
It's
Okay.
like 50 positions.
Doesn't look too
and
bad.
Partners. So you can see we're trying to hook around the corner here and stay out of the, there's not much waves, but there's boils and stuff like this, so we're just kind of hooking it around the corner.
That was good.
There's a couple of famous wave trains. So this one, we kind of missed everything. And here goes Mike, and the guy next to us. So they got some arrows that one. So I got an earful from my Rebecca saying, "We missed everything. Let's do it again." So okay, we switched positions. So we paddled back upriver, and now we're going to turn into the flow.
Okay, I think we're there.
Ready?
Yep.
Rebecca likes excitement. Being whatever, 28, 29-year-old
We got it.
likes excitement. As the other people are heading up.
It won't get too much air. There's a natural frequency.
Natural frequency.
We'll start a little higher.
just cutting across to try to get to the inside of the curve.
Oh, that's
So
a
the
perfect
good
angle.
stuff.
That was a perfect angle for those waves.
But this is the scenery, kilometer after kilometer, just winding down. It's kind of like a little roller coaster. You're just motoring along. It's just constant like this.
The Broken Skull was a great river because it was near continuous class 1.5, but no scouting required. So you could just pick your route through. The guides were in the lead boat, so we just kind of followed them, pick your own way through. But it was very enjoyable
up.
because there was no scouting.
Yeah. The other advantage of having guides is, you know, doing all the food. We would do cleanup and stuff like that, but they were doing all the food, so you'd have a gourmet lunch, stuff. This was an interesting spot here. It was like a whirlpool. So you can see here, Doug and Jim are heading upriver. We just got caught in it, so we're heading up. Oh, there's Yuri. So we should have been in the flow a little bit more. So you can just see you're going 10K an hour and you hit that kind of still water or recirculating water. You're just all over the place. And then the added thing I had is I'm way heavier than Rebecca, so the minute my front end digs in, it spins. So it's extra challenge for her on this one. But no harm. We just kind of spun around and that was it. Camp 6.
Down there somewhere is the confluence of the South Nahani. Another couple K probably. So we're just entering the South Nahani. It's coming in on the right here.
So Broken Skull was 110K. I think it took us 6 days to do it. You know, so you're talking
Lights on, but it's not flashing yet.
No.
Not yet.
you're talking
not
like
yet.
20K a day.
Just
average,
on. Lights on, but nobody's home.
which is not
Run,
hard.
Larry, run.
That's flashing. Hurry.
So this is our group,
I think it got Stop flashing.
and Larry's our
That's only like-
lead photographer. I just put a GoPro down,
one where everybody's
capture the process, which is kind of funny in itself. Just the process
before we
and
did the
listening to
test.
people,
Almost in the
the
picture.
setup.
Okay, it's on. The light.
No,
Is it back
light's
on?
not on.
No,
Light's
off
not on.
again.
Okay. I got a good picture of this garage.
Technology.
Okay, I'm gonna get in beside Brian there.
Looks like
you're got Jupiter on there.
Yeah, it looks like it's pointed way up.
It's okay.
Well, it's down low though, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's fine. He can see it. He's got a screen. Yeah.
We had a good group. There was a lot of
Lights on.
All right.
Run.
12 seconds. Can I make it?
very interesting in the whole adventure.
Take another one.
You try one more?
Yeah.
Testing.
Yeah.
Just for laughs.
Let's see you hustle. My eyes
This is
are
where I
always-
want to see your best Broken Skull face.
Oh no.
Because there was 11 of us and then the 3 guides. So Jason over on the right side, Ollie the next to him, and then the
Lights on.
second girl in from the left is
He's gonna stay with me.
what's her name? Jody, yes. So Jody was Saskatchewan, Ollie was Quebec City, and Jason was
Thanks, Larry.
Canmore, Alberta.
One other thing we'd like to do.
Here we go. More tequila.
Just as a thank you to the spirits of the Broken Skull. And hello and welcome to the Nahani. Remembering that the Dene word for thank you is Nasicho. Massey Cho. Like, great things. Like Cho is great. Like impressive.
One of the advantages of having guides with us was
this whole area is called the Day Cho.
Was the exposure to the local cultural heritage of the Dene people. So Jason, our head guide here, is distributing tobacco that we can make proper offerings to these natural sites.
Those are the people on the trip. All right, excellent. Okay, let's take that off now, and let me stop sharing for an instant. All right, so that was the video with kind of voiceovers, and thank you, Brian and Mike, for adding extra insight there. That was good. So I've got a PDF, and I think I'll go through that next. I think it was made by the park a couple of years back, and I was trying to figure out the best way to do this, but I'm thinking I'll just kind of scroll through it slowly. If anybody's interested in getting the PDF, they can just shoot me an email, and I can, easily send it to them. If you're planning a trip, this is what you'll need for the Broken Skull. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, I've done the Broken Skull. That's the end of the Broken Skull, because we've got the confluence now of the South Nahanni. And then next week on the 13th, same time, same channel, we're going to do the Nahanni, which is a slightly longer video, but it will go through the end of the trip, the last 2/3 of the trip. So let me share this guide. And again, Brian and whoever else is on the trip, they can chime in. So can you guys see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, this is the guide, and it's in portrait mode right now. So I don't know what the best way to do this. I kind of like flattened it, but then you can't see the whole thing. But I guess I'll do it this way, and we'll just scroll through it slowly and see how she handles it. So this is actually Divide Creek, the part we lined, although some of us wanted to run this. One of the issues with the guides is they've got to, gear the trip to the lowest common denominator, because they can't lose a boat on day one, basically. So that is in my mind, the negative side of having a guided trip. You got to go to the lowest common denominator of the group. And on the flip side, the positive is, as Mike mentioned, and Brian, as you gain great insight, because they've got all the notes and inside the best hikes and where to camp and all this kind of stuff. So it's always a trade-off. Do you pick guided or self-guided? This is actually my first guided trip, so I kind of knew what to expect from other people's discussions. This guide has got 40 some pages of stuff, so I'm just going to kind of cursory go through it. They talk about the indigenous people and some of the high points, and then they break down the actual river into these roughly 15 pages as you walk your way through the whole thing. And then they talk about getting there, the plane, the road, the shuttles, the guides, the reservations, and then some safety and bears and weather and campfire. So a little bit of everything, and then contact us if you need more information. So I'll just scroll through this. So the first couple pages are your typical marketing thing. I can't pronounce that. Nachicho. Okay. This is one thing we went paddling by. Mount Nachi. Oh no, actually we didn't go by this. We flew by this Mount Wilson. This is about 30K away. Yeah, we flew by that. 2 parks, 1 river. So the Broken Skull is going through basically 2 parks. And this is it kind of defined in colors. So it's basically the Nahani and the Nachi Joe Park, I guess. The top end over here was really the Dene Nation controlled that, and then the bottom was, Mike, do you remember what the bottom, this South Nahani, was it also Dene or I can't remember now.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Denny the whole way.
Yeah, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, then scratch that. I'm getting my trips mixed up. Okay, this is oh yeah, they had this thing where they made they got these, plastic red chairs, and they started distributing them the last few years. So the thing is, the red chairs, you're supposed to sit down there and enjoy the vistas, of course. So we came across a few of these red chairs at different places, not on the actual river, but more on the South Nahani when we got to a ranger station or something like that, or on a hike near a ranger station. Broken Skull River. So this is what we saw paddling down the river. Typical. They have people looking at maps, planning the river. It says here continuous Whitewater, 108 kilometers. Yeah, 108 to 110, something like that. And this is typical campsites. There's no issue with finding campsite. Every turn, there's a campsite basically, or a gravel bar. And usually it's up a few feet from the actual river. So Divide Lake is where we started. It says here, if you're planning a trip, air charge start at $26.50, depending on what airport you take and fly out of. So you have to kind of, and I'll mention this in the next part of the presentation, there's all kind of options. So Divide Lake, we flew in, as you mentioned, and the 2K down, we got to Swallow Falls. We have to do a little portage. So only like 150 meters.
One of the things I like, Gary, and actually just scroll back a little bit, at Divide Lake, you're basically above the tree line. There are some small individual trees. Yep. And then of course, over the course of the 110 kilometers, you go right from no trees right back into the the tree line and everything else. So at the beginning on our first hike day, I mean, you could see for, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 kilometers type of thing. It was when we were up that hill.
Yeah,
it was really spectacular.
Yeah, I agree. So Swallow Falls is a short 150 meter portage going down Divide Creek, which we lined, and then just at the bottom end, I think this is called what was this called? I can't remember the name of this rapid.
Thank you, Rapid.
Thank you, Rapid. Yeah, which again was class 1.5-ish. There was a few rocks you had to go around, but not aggressive moves. Just you could see them coming up like 10, 15 meters in front, and you just work your way around it. White Wolf Creek. This is where that big thunder shower was cracking in here and all the way around. This is the setup here. The hot springs, so at kilometer 36. It looks like they have a little more water than we had.
Yeah, and there's actually 2 levels. So this is the upper level.
Yeah.
And the water is a bit cooler. And then in the video there where we saw Mike, it was
he was over here somewhere.
Lower. Yeah, 10 feet lower, and it was, I don't know, 10 degrees warmer too. So
yeah.
So what kind of temperature are you looking at in the hot spring? Like a hot swimming pool or warmer?
Yeah, like 90s, 90 Fahrenheit or something,
Yeah, the lower one. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't over the top, but it was definitely warmer than, surrounding air. And I guess what was the air temperature? Maybe 20 C? So maybe it was like 25 or something?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And it's about a, what was it, 3 kilometer hike off of the
Yeah, 2K.
Broken Skull?
2K.
2K?
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I GPSed it somewhere along the way.
And it's basically
Oh, here you
bushwhack.
go. There, we'll split the difference, 2.5.
2.5, okay. So there is no established trail. It's just bushwhacking up along the creek until you get to this point.
But it's not that hard. You could see there's a couple trees and, meter high grasses and stuff. So you got to be, I guess, bear wise. But I think, there was like 14 of us. So we're kind of making enough noise probably. Downriver 36 to 42, we get the mini gate, which kind of looks like the South Nahani gate. So it's just like a little S turn, but nothing technical or anything. The water's flowing through, but the waves are like 3 inches high or something. This time, I think we went right by this. It was like a little riffle off to the side called Grizzly Bear Creek. There's like a little wave train. I didn't even see it because we were probably on the other side of the river or something. The river is only like, I don't know, 30, 40 meters wide here, maybe 30 meters. It's not super wide, but I mean, you can easily miss these things. If you took a hike up this Grizzly Bear Hot Springs, it's a good 10K hike. You get to kind of a tufa mound where there's I guess the hot spring, water is coming out of solution, I guess, and forming these tufa mounds of different chemicals. There's also a hike up. You can go to Grizzly Bear Lake. We didn't do that. That was too much out of the way. There was one of the guys in the 70s, I think, that says here, let me zoom in here. So kind of like a little bit of local history, I guess. 1979, this guy, Chris Larkin, got dropped off, built a cabin, and spent, I guess, 1 year there or 1 winter there. And then he paddled out the rest of it. Brian, you researched this a bit, right?
Yeah. We didn't climb. It was about half a K off of river left. And there's a small lake where he came in on a float plane, unloaded, and then built his cabin that we see the remains there, sort of on a flat little landing and stuff. I guess we were tight for time, so we didn't stop or go visit this, but
yeah,
not much to see, I guess, but
yeah, probably not much to see, but interesting. He spent the winter there, I think, and paddled out the next year. Yeah, you can see everything's caved in. This is this Lafferty's Rival, where Rebecca and I were over here, and Mike and Olivier were plowing through, something like that. This is probably a little higher water than we had, but that's the idea. It's just a couple, up and downs, but nothing super serious, nothing to run into. Black Wolf Creek. All these creeks have excellent names. Now, where I end the video at the confluence, and we had that tobacco offering. The real trip, you'd have to go beyond that to get flown out. So there's another place called Bunny Bar, which the plane can land on the river on the South Nahani, or you can keep going and you can get to Rabbit Kettle Lake, which is maybe another day down, or maybe a day or two down. So typically, if you start on the Broken Skull, you would go down to the Bunny Bar, which is on the river pickup, or maybe another day or so, and you get to Rabbit Kettle Lake, where the plane can land right on the lake here. The issue with like Rabbit Kettle Lake is it's slightly inland from the river, and there's a lot more flies. The water's warm though. I mean, it's a fresh water. It's a, easily swimmable lake. And again, this lake was like frozen over, 2 or 3 weeks before. So it's really amazing how fast it warms up. Mike, you went for swim here, right?
I went for a lot of swims. I'm a very clean camper. So I went
Yes.
into the river about every other day. And you just have to get used to the the cold temperature of
Yeah.
the water in the
So
river itself.
what do you think the temperature is of the river?
Just a few degrees above freezing.
Yeah.
It was cold.
Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be some shrinkage. The lake, on the other hand, you could spend 15 minutes in there, no problem. It's quite nice water. This is just an overview, gives you an idea. Maybe I'll just zoom in here, give you an idea where we were. So this is the Nahanni, and up this way is the Broken Skull. I guess the Nahanni is going this way a little bit. Gives you an idea. Whitehorse. We actually flew up here to Mayo and then came across. They've also had people down here in, I think down here in Nelson come up. We've also had people from Fort Simpson come up. So there's a couple options. I think even Norman Wells can come down, depending on where you fly to.
Watson Lake in northern BC was
true. Over about here, I'd say. Now I have a map on my next PowerPoint that shows that. Okay, so that's pretty good. Gives you an idea where we're battling.
But maybe one other thing, Gary, upstream of Rabbit Kettle, if somebody's doing a future trip, you might have heard or seen pictures of the Cirque of the Unclimbables. And it's probably half a day north of Rabbit Kettle, River Right. There's a portage trail. Can't remember the distance, probably 5K in. And then there's some of the outfitters have left old canoes there. And so you can just leave your gear on the river, take what you need, hike in, use the canoes, paddle to the far end, and then do a day hike up to Cirque of the Unclimbables. Round trip, it's probably 3 days added on. Yeah. So it's not just a short side trip or whatever. So it is quite. I was up there years ago, and it's quite spectacular.
Yeah, I think Jason said he did that years ago. It was our lead guide, and yeah, you need to pack a tent and all the gear you need. So it's quite a hike, and then you get into this kind of crucible where it's just surrounded by unclimbable peaks, kind of thing.
The reason why it's popular is all the mountains down the Broken Skull and Nahanni are limestone, which is not good for mountain climbing because the rock is not hard enough. The Cirque of the Unclimbables, however, is a protrusion of granite that pokes up through the limestone. So it's perfect for climbing because the granite is harder rock that will hold the pitons in the holes. So it's a world-class destination for climbers. Very remote, but very scenic and very challenging.
Yeah. Now we'll hit that next week because that's really part of the South Nahanni. That's why I cut it at the confluence. It's not really, the trip doesn't end there. You have to go on, and like I said, there's a couple options. You can go on all the way and do the whole South Nahanni, or there's other exit points on the river or lakes off the river. All right, so that's that bit. The last thing I've got is I actually put the nuts and bolts of the trip. So I just want to bring this up and I'll share it. And this is where, once I open my presentation here, let's see now. Work this, that goes there. Okay, it's gonna, yeah, I think that's working. Okay, now I got to share again. Where did I go? Got too many screens here. Fighting my screens right now. Right here. Okay. Screen 2. All right, let me know when you can see something.
Here we go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so this is, once I find my mouse. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is the group, as you saw. These are all the people. So I'll just go through the members of the group. Everybody in white are, our group, and the people in yellow are the guides. So we'll start at the bottom here. Rebecca's my daughter. Jody was the main cook on this trip. Now I found out couple members from our group did it in August, and she was the main lead guide on their trip. Fiona, Yuri, Michael is in the audience, Jason, Olivier, those are guides. Jim, myself, Doug and Larry are brothers. Doug actually did it many years ago, like we're talking 20 some years ago, 25 maybe. So he remembers some of it. Jean-Claude, or JC for short, Neil, Larry I mentioned, and Brian is in the audience. It was an excellent group. Part of the guides, they said there's a paddle shack coming up in 3 or 4 days. So everybody got excited. So Jim went out, got a piece of lumber. Okay, so a round, well, I think it was a split board, but natural piece of wood. And we decided to whittle a paddle. And this paddle went around, and everybody got a whittle or something, or sandpaper or something, and ended up whittling this paddle together. And on the flip side, of course, we signed our names. And this paddle got hung up, and you'll see it on the South Nahani when I show that presentation next week. So this was quite interesting because we hung it in the paddle shack. And Eric, I don't know if Eric's on the call right now. Eric and his group of 5 people, or 6 people in all, WCA members, did it in August. And because we hung the paddle right as you enter the door, he saw it immediately. So I was just talking to him today, and he says, "Oh yeah, I saw it." And I goes, "I know that person. I know that person. I know that person." So it was quite neat to have somebody bump into your paddle. That paddle's going to be there for a long time until it falls down, I guess. But there's hundreds of paddles in this, paddle shack.
Yeah, Gary, it's Eric here. It's funny because it was actually one of the first paddles we saw when we walked into the building, and it was totally unexpected. So I'm like, oh, they just did this, a couple of weeks before us. So really cool.
Yeah. Now, Eric, I know you were on one of the river trips we did in the spring, like a one-day thing, and I can't remember which one it was, Beaver or something. And we were all sitting at the roadside, or standing at the roadside, chewing on our peanut butter sandwiches. And you were talking about Nahani, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing Nahani," and I'm doing Nahani. And there's a whole bunch of people, doing Nahani at different times. So, like I said, it was 4 groups that I know of, maybe more, that have done it this past year. And I could see in the audience there's a few people that want to do it in the future. So perfect.
So how many paddles would be in that shack?
Well, you got to come next week, and I'll show you a video of all the paddles.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. And some have fallen down because they're tied up by string, and the string, broke, and they're all like littered. And of course, these cabins are full of mice and stuff. So the paddles are moving all the way all over the place. There's little paddles and, 3-4 foot paddles, and some really crude and some quite elegant. There's all kind. Anyways, it was neat to try to go in there and see if you could see a name that you recognized. Trip summary. It's kind of an eye chart, but because it's going to be on YouTube, you can kind of freeze the frame and actually get the information, or contact me and I'll send you the spreadsheet. This gives you an idea. This is the date, the day, the campsite, where we were, and a location. How many kilometers to go to the end? How many kilometers have we done? And kind of a running count of the day, I guess. And then if we hiked that day, a running count. So that'll give you an idea. The first day we did nothing. We did a hike. We did 2K. We did 2 point, whatever. And just the mile points going through. So you could see when we were moving, we were doing like 29, 35, it was kind of like those kind of mileages. If you look at the delta, no, sorry, this is the adding up, but you could see the deltas is not a lot, right? Like this is 25, 0, I don't know, 4, etc. Right? So you're not moving at any blistering pace. You only have 110K to go, really. And you got, like, it took us, 9 days to go 110. So the average speed is like, 12K an hour, 12K a day or something. But generally what we did is we stay at camp. So you could see here, we were at camp 1 a few days, and then camp 2, and then camp 3 a few days, etc. And we pretty well hit all the high points, I'd say, on the Broken Skull.
The pace was excellent for the Broken Skull, well, for the whole trip with the Nahanni as well. It was intended not to be a push trip. It was really intended to be a leisurely, take your time and enjoy, not rush kind of trip. And it did not feel rushed at all. It was quite pleasant. Pace was good. The speed of the current certainly helped push us along. So it was easy paddling as well.
Yeah. And I don't think it's too complicated. So, it was, I would say, less than most Ontario, Quebec rivers that we've done. It was quite, forgiving. I'll give you like an overview here. Whitehorse, that's where we landed. We kind of got shuttled to Mayo. So you're going to go up this way and then over. And it's about a 5-hour shuttle. And then we flew to the headwaters right here. And this is the overall 483 kilometer trip. And this is the actual confluence. So this is what we just covered on the presentation, this first 110K. Other airports you can get there is Watson Lake. There's an aerodrome there, drone, that you can fly in. Fort Simpson, I've heard of people flying in from there. And way up here, Norman Wells, you can fly in. Also, Fort Nelson has an airport. So we were with Nahanni River Adventures. They have a base in Whitehorse. They also have a satellite base in Fort Simpson. And I know they've done trips when you go online, they talk about people getting to Fort Nelson and flying up. And then when they get here, I guess they get, driven back to Fort Nelson or fly back to Fort Nelson. I'm not sure. So there's all kind of combinations. When we finished the overall trip, we got shuttled to Fort Simpson, and then we took a plane to Yellowknife, and then we're on commercial flights back to, Edmonton or wherever to Toronto eventually. So that's kind of the overview of the map. We were on a guided trip, and I just pulled this off the internet today, but we basically paid this price, about $10,000 a person. 23 days, all the food for the Broken Skull, South Nahanni. Once you get picked up on day 1, they basically feed you and point you in the right direction for the 23 days. So this is what you pay, but there's not much thinking. You don't have to do any logistics. You just pay the shot. Another trip is just doing the Broken Skull and then exiting at South Nahanni. So maybe a day or two into the South Nahanni. That's $92.53. So the delta of, another $600, we just said, let's do the whole thing. Most of us. Out of the 11 of us, is that right? Yeah. Out of the 11 of us that did it, 2 people said they wanted to exit at the falls. So we ended up with 11 of us plus the 3 guides doing the top end, and then the bottom end there was 9 of us plus the 3 guides. So it kind of worked out even number for canoes.
If I could just interrupt for a sec.
Sure.
One of the reasons why we took a guided trip was, normally we go self-guided, and Neil Campbell was one who organized our trip. And he negotiated with the main operators up there just to do a self-guided trip, which would mean we would only get airfare, shuttles, canoe rentals. But the best time they could give us was between the 2 companies, Blackfeather and Nahanni River Adventures, was in August. But in August, late August, with the 23-day trip, it can start to snow near the end, because the window of canoeability time is fairly short, as Gary said. The lakes were frozen up until a couple of weeks, mid-June. So Neil asked the guides, how can we get a prime spot in July? And the Nahanni River Adventures already had 2 other Broken Skull River trips done for mid and late July. And they said, well, the only way we can put you in a prime July spot is if you hire us as guides and pay us the full amount for not just the land shuttle, the airfare on the float planes and the canoe rentals, but now you know, if you pay for 3 guides and let us provision it, then we'll put you on a prime early July slot. So they just added a separate trip just for us because we were already 11 of us. So they didn't have to add other people. We were our own trip. So we had the best of both. We had a group of friends that we were going to do it on our own, but then we had it guided, which has other advantages, like they do all the cooking and know where to go and all those sort of things. So that's how we ended up taking a guided trip. And as Gary said, this is the first guided trip for most of us, Gary and I included. And my thought was I loved doing the guided trip because they did all the food. They cooked excellent meals. They knew where to go. They knew all the hot spots, where the good hikes were. You didn't have to really think. You could just follow them, and they knew where to go. They knew how to pace the trip because they knew where all the campsites and whatnot were. Interestingly enough, the 3 guides that we had from Nahanni River Adventures, none of them had paddled the Broken Skull before, but of course they had spoken to other guides who had and had marked up the maps. So even for them, it was just as exciting for our 3 guides as the first time down the river.
Yeah, I agree.
Could I interrupt and ask if you're able to share the price difference between the self-guided as you described it and the fully guided?
Getting to that. Yeah, I don't have exact
I'm your
because
straight man, Gary.
Yeah, no problem. Because like I said, I always do it we always organize ourselves. And it's not like I have to organize everything. We get a group and we say, you do the flight, you do the shuttle, you do the rental, whatever. You divide up the task. So I just got some information, and I think Eric provided some of this. This is a little bit of a convoluted thing, but out of Mayo, I'm guesstimating because I'm lining up a Wind River thing, and I'm just judging on the distance. I'm guessing it's about $5,000 for the flight from Mayo to what we did, Divide Lake. I did ask Canoe for a quote, but it didn't come back in time. I did get a quote for the Wind River, and I know the Wind River to get to the McCloskey Lake is, whatever, 1,800 or 1,300, whatever it was. And to Taco Bar coming out is 3,800. So I could just project the distance and guesstimate it's about 5,000. And that's a flight with, an otter with 6 people, 3 boats. So when you divide it out, you divide by 6, that's what it costs to get in. So this is kind of the number from Mayo. But like I mentioned, you can fly out of other airports, Fort Simpson, which will be Simpson Air. Nelson, is another airline there. So you got to kind of shop around and see what the best logistics are, like getting there, shuttle, and flight. So if you use that guide that I showed you, it lists all these airlines.
But in our case, sorry, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, we've used these guys quite a few times because I've done the Snake and I've done the what was the other one I did? This one, I guess. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so we had 2 planes bring us in, and each plane did 2 trips. So Elcan Air took us from Mayo, 2 trips into Divide Lake. And then before we got there, 2 flights had come in from Watson Lake with the guides and extra canoes. So in all, for 14 of us, 7 canoes, were 4 flights on 2 different aircraft coming from 2 different airports to Divide Lake. So it is a lot more logistical effort, certainly when you have a group of that size.
Yeah, most economic, when you look at the flights, like the most economic number is 6 or any combination of 6. When you have 2, it's a Beaver and it costs way more per person. When you have 4, it's a Cessna and it costs a little less per person. When you have 6, it's the Optimum, or 12 or 18 or whatever. But generally 6 or 12, that's the optimum number of people and boats and flight cost, etc. Just to give you an idea on shuttle services, so you've got to get there. So you can either rent a car, a van, but now you got to put the canoe on the van. And if you've got, a couple of boats, you need maybe 2 vans. You could nest the boats and, stick them on top. So depending on what you rent, you can maybe do it, or you get a service to do the shuttle service. So in Whitehorse, there's Up North Adventures. I've used them, and just on their website, this gives you an idea. Whitehorse to Mayo, one way, with your 6 people, it's going to cost you $1,700. But then again, you divide by 6, so you're talking, whatever it is, a couple $400 each or $500 with tax. So that's what it costs you to get there. Also on our Nahani, when we got to the end, we needed a boat shuttle, and Eric provided this because he did a self-guided to Nahani, and I'll bring this up next week too. So there's boat shuttles, there's van shuttles. So you can see it's going to cost you $300-400 to get from the end back to Fort Simpson. And depending on where you exit, this will vary, I guess. Canoe rentals, typically from up north in the Whitehorse, it's $59 a day for fully outfitted canoe, or $355 per week, and usually going for 2-3 weeks. So these are the numbers you're going to deal with. But again, there's 2 people going to divide this canoe, right? So you're talking like $30 a day on average. And then Fort Simpson, it was roughly in the $40. Eric gave me a number that he paid, and I figured his trip was 12 days long, and I divided by 12, and I got a roughly $40 canoe per day. I don't know if Eric, if you want to chime in there, but does that sound right?
Yeah. We actually brought our own paddles. So they actually, I find that these outfitters often, there's a premium for all of the extra gear that you would get from them. So that was about the cost for just the canoe, spray skirt included. And then there was extra for, like the repair kit and things like that. So.
Yeah, so you can negotiate, and you could say I'm bringing my own paddle, or like I technically don't bring my paddle because it's just an awkward thing on an airplane, right? To pack, and it's going to get stuck in a conveyor belt somewhere, So I generally just go with the crappy paddle they give you, and I'm happy with that. Neil had a good solution. He had a paddle he could take apart, so it had like a quick release thing. That was kind of neat.
In our case, we threw 9 paddles into a snowboard bag and brought that on. So that's probably the best way of doing it. You're paying one overage charge.
You group it.
So
it's a good point.
Gary.
Yep.
This is Jeff Mead. So we're planning a self-guided for next July, and I got a quote from Alcan about a month or 6 weeks ago. And their quote for 6 passengers, 3 canoes, Mayo to divide, was $8,200 before GST.
Okay.
So it's a little more dear than your guesstimate.
Okay, so that's a good point. So that 5,000 I showed you was my guess. It's actually 8,200. Yeah. Did you check with other, like going out of Fort Simpson or Fort Nelson?
One of the other members is doing that, and we've yet to compare notes, but the current plan is likely to go out of Fort Simpson. But also, we were not able to find outfitters that wanted to run us canoes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So we're actually planning on, some of us anyway, are planning on driving out with a trailer with the canoes.
Okay, well, that's another option.
Yeah.
I think the outfitters, both last year and again this year, from some newsletters I've seen, extremely busy, right? They're the busiest. I think Nahani River ran, I can't remember the number, 30 or 40 trips this year, all-time record. Next year is sounding the same. So they might not have spare canoes to rent out to self-guided trips and stuff. So they're sort of keep them for themselves, I guess.
Yeah. So we actually had to buy a prospector in order to get, because one of us owns a canyon. So in order to get a pair that would nest, we had to buy a prospector that we likely will sell out there at the end of the trip.
Okay, so like a 17-footer or something?
Yeah, 17-foot Esquif prospector.
Okay. It's a killer. You just bought it and now you gotta take it all apart.
Yeah.
And usually get rid of the riveted on deck plate, you know?
If you're starting in Mayo and you finish in Fort Simpson, how does the outfitter get their canoes back? Do they charge you a premium for that?
It depends. In this case, the outfitter, most of their stuff was in Fort Simpson. So we started in Whitehorse and they wanted to get the canoes back to Fort Simpson. You see, the canoes the previous year got trapped somehow in Whitehorse and they wanted to get them back. So it was a good excuse to have a trip to bring their canoes back home to them in a way. I mean, they're always, you know, these outfitters, there's stuff going every which way, you know, to keep track of this. It's like a friggin' puzzle, you know. It used to be little stickies on a board, but maybe now they have a computer that says where all their resources are, because it's logistics nightmare. You've got guides to track, you've got, you know, equipment galore every which way. You know, might be a nightmare.
I think too, Gary, the if you're doing the Nahanni River, probably more trips will start out of Fort Simpson.
Yeah.
When we were doing the Broken Skull, it's definitely more trips probably start out of the Whitehorse, Mayo, whatever area. And I'm sure mid-season they're shuttling canoes in either direction, wherever they need the canoes. You know, it's probably a 20-odd hour drive between Fort Simpson and Whitehorse. But I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff going back and forth. Our bags, we left all our bags in Whitehorse and they were waiting for us in Fort Simpson. I'm not sure if they flew them or if they drove them over, but you know, they had 2 to 3 weeks to do all this, and
So
they
this
were
is
there.
like when we get to Whitehorse, we had day bags, not our canoe bags, but you always pack a little like backpack or small backpack of, you know, day clothes, so your city clothes, and then they got shuttled to this other locale, Fort Simpson. So when we arrived, we found our bag, most of them. It was good. Okay, so that's the presentation. The plan is next week to do the South Nahanni, same format, go through the video, voiceover. You can watch the videos. The Broken Skull and the Nahanni are on YouTube right now. So if you wanted to see it clearer, and then, you know, you can look at it beforehand and save yourself some time looking for stuff. But the idea of this presentation is to more the nuts and bolts about, you know, where to go, who to contact. So that was the idea, and give people an idea of the cost and the logistics. There's many combinations you can come up with to get there.
There are some good comments in the chat about logistics. Okay. So don't miss that if you're interested.
Okay, so why don't we read some of those comments while we're here? I'm gonna work backwards here. We have been using a pack boat for 15 years, very economical. Yep. We ship our gear in the boat. Yep. Yeah, I've seen pack boats used on, I was on the Blood Vein, and a couple people had these Nanny, which I think are Swedish made. And you just erect this kind of vinyl pack boat, and it would work fine on these rivers. There's nothing really you're running into. And if you run into anything, it's very smooth rocks. So that would work. Fort Simpson was the cheapest starting endpoint. Yep. We rented canoes from Blackfeather and Fort Simpson. We met at Blackfeather trip at the end of the van shuttle. Yep. Don't forget 74 cents US buys you a Canadian dollar. Yes. We paddled the Broken Skull Nahanni in 2016 and flew out of Whitehorse. Yeah, and that's very interesting. I wanted to share that actually. There was a little bit of history here, and let me see if I can get my machine to do its thing here. And again, I'm fighting with my screens. Just give me a second here. Nope. Okay, how do I get that screen turned off? Okay, give me a second here. I have to kill my PowerPoint because it's not listening to me. PowerPoint, that one there. Okay. In this PDF guide, I read some interesting history at the back end here. Let me just whip to the back here because it's I was like shocked. Okay, let's see. Is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. If rivers could talk. In the 1960s, a geologist ascending the river found a cracked moose skull. He submitted Broken Skull River to the Geographic Place Names Board, and that's how it got its name. 1979, we talked about Chris Larkin. He's the cabin guy, and he went down the river in 1980, which 1 year later. So he overwintered there. In 2000, the Park Canada staff flew into the Broken Skull, and Portage River wanted to check out the section, became part of the National Reserve. This was very interesting. Before 2015, there was just 2 known groups who paddled the entire river. I mean, we're only talking 110K. Somebody mentioned in the chat they did it in 2016. This is John. And according to this, there was only this guy who did it in 2015. And it says here in the early 1990s, he broke the river for his honeymoon. Okay, so before 2015, there was just 2 known groups who paddled the entire river. Mike Fishner, something like that, Fishner, was the only guy he could reach who had paddled the river. In the 1990s, he ran the Broken Skull for his honeymoon and thought it was the first ascent, but then he met somebody later on, polio survivor, who had done it the year before. So we're talking, what, 7 years ago?
Not that long ago.
That's not long. So this is a very, very new river, and it's, I don't consider it hard. It's quite, reasonably easy river, I would say. It's just expensive to get in and out, but if you do the whole thing, that's the way to go, I guess.
Gary, can I ask you a question? This is sort of a loaded question, but for the money you spend, which is pretty pricey to get in there, is this trip worth it compared to, I mean, you've done a lot of other rivers.
Yeah, I would say it is, because I like the Yukon for the vistas and the geography. And just you go on top of a mountain, you say, well, okay, I'm going to be there, and 3 days later, and it's like 100K away. It's the vistas and the it's definitely not the flies. It's the vistas and just the clear water, especially these, like the Snake, the Wind, the Heart River was the same thing that people gave presentations on. I think Mike Stacy's in the audience here. He gave a presentation on the Wind. It's just crystal clear water. It's beautiful.
Okay.
And the vistas. Now, what I would say is you can do the trip for half the money. It's not $10,000 a person if you self-organize. Eric, who's in the audience, he did a piece in Nahanni, so he flew into, and we'll talk about this next week, basically. But he flew in. I think he came out with $2,100 for the whole trip per person.
Yeah, it was about 2,100, but that excludes transportation from Toronto to Yellowknife. And to cut cost, we also, rather than flying from Yellowknife to Fort Simpson, which is actually a really expensive flight, we decided to rent cars.
Yeah, it was $750 that flight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think all said, our cost for self-guided South Nahanni from Virginia Falls down was like 3,000 to 3,500 maybe.
Yeah.
I think so. Eric, just to add to Eric's question, don't inadvertently, rush down the river. I mean, you could literally do the river in 3 days especially with the strong current. And then, or halfway through, sometimes you say, geez, I wish we would have stopped or spent an extra day back there somewhere. And you can do the river easily and take those 3 or 4, 5 days, just for hiking and enjoying the area when you have it and stuff like that. And to me, when we were talking about the trip, there was about 3 or 4 things that I really liked about the trip. And with the guided, one was the scenery, other one was the river itself. I liked, all the food. We helped out and stuff, but a lot of times, there was a couple pictures there in the video where a lot of times, once the camp was set up, they really didn't want you interfering with their food preparation. We would just sit along the river, looking out, waiting for an appetizer round to come to us.
That's
before
nice.
dinner. Before dinner.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and we've talked about this in smaller groups since the trip. We all tend to be early risers, as general rule of thumb. A lot of canoeists, and we want to get on the river, and you can start paddling. Let's get some miles in or whatever. And the nice thing about the guided trip was they set the pace. They knew the river from their previous notes and guides, talking with each other. And we literally, we got on the river at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning by the time all the gear was packed and everything. But we'd be off the river by 3 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 20, 30 kilometers, sometimes. And so they set the pace, which was nice because there was no rush. Everybody just sort of, okay, we're on the river when we're on the river and away we go type of thing. So, and that included breaks for lunch and stuff like that. So you can do a lot of miles quickly, and then you sort of regret that maybe we should have spent more time. So definitely take your time and put that in your planning.
Yeah. And one of the things is every night, I know Fiona kept saying, what's coming up? What's coming? She wanted all the options, right? Well, we could do the cab, we could do this hike, we could do that hike, we could do, we would have a discussion, whoever was left, and just come up with, okay, we want to do this, we don't want to do that, we want to do this, so it came out, it was geared to us. They gave us the options and we just, did the hikes accordingly. And we had some great hikes up creeks where you're walking in the water and all kind of fun stuff, swimming in that cold water, and you're in this like chasm that looks like something in the Phoenix desert or something, and it's all rounded rocks and stuff, and you wouldn't know to go there because it's like 2K up the river up to this creek. You'd need the guide to say somebody told him this is a good hike. So that's the advantage. But most times you can do things for about half the price or maybe even less of a guided trip.
In terms of value for the money, I would say that this was excellent value for the money, because yes, you could do it cheaper if you did it self-guided, but then you've got to do all the food shopping, preparation, cooking, all the logistical things that the outfitter takes good care of. And so for me, the incremental extra cost of a guided trip was well worth it, because it meant you had a more relaxing trip. They cooked, over 70 meals for us, and they were gourmet meals. We had fresh fruit and vegetables every day. We had one food drop off at Virginia Falls, but we had fresh food every day, and it was delicious, and you didn't have to cook it. They knew all the recipes. There's 3 of them. The ratio was 1 guide for 4 guests. So they had lots of staff to do all the work. We'd get to a campsite. One of them would be assigned to dig a biffy. So they would dig a hole, put up a shelter on top of it. And they had a system where at the campsite, they would have a bucket to wash your hands. And beside it, they had a shovel and with the bear spray. So if you wanted to go to the washroom, you'd look to see if the shovel was there, because if the shovel wasn't there, that means someone was using the washroom. You take the shovel and the bear spray, you go do your business in the literally an outhouse. It was a tent structure. Yeah, you'd use the shovel to cover over your feces and then hike back, wash your hands. It was a great system, but every campsite, they had like a toilet seat, a hard toilet seat, like a real toilet seat that you could sit on. And they
That's
had
worth 10,000.
all of these they had all these creature comforts to make it easy for you. And their adage was, look, you're on vacation. Our job is to make you relax and enjoy this beautiful scenery. Let us do all the grunt work. We'll gather the wood for the fire, make the fires, we'll cook the food. All you have to do is set up your own tent and do the dishes. And that was it in terms of what the group
But
responsibilities
I think
were.
all of us gathered, you know, did stuff. We helped them, right? I know Rebecca was in there chopping away, and you know, there were people helping with the wood and the sawing and all that kind of stuff. So
it wasn't required, and I guess
it wasn't required.
Some of the guests were light, but of course we're all campers, so we all pitch in. But it wasn't required, which is you didn't you didn't feel guilty if you weren't pitching in all the time.
Pitching in.
Yeah. So it was very relaxing going on a guided trip. This was my first guided trip. And I thought, if I'm going to do more of these up north, far north trips, I would do a guided trip. It's a little bit more money, but I think it's excellent value for the money, especially when you're in a large group like this, where you can defray the costs over a larger number of people.
Yeah, I think too, we had an advantage, was all WCA members. So it was one group of us. When you go with a guided group and you have 2 and 1 and a photographer and this, you're on, 12 different agendas. Generally, we were on, 1 or 2 agendas, right? Because everybody had the same idea. So that was good, I guess. But I've heard of nightmare trips where you get a photographer and he wants to race ahead and take pictures of you guys. So, you gotta watch the group you're in, I guess. Ideally pick, people in the group. So you've got a certain
we had the best of both worlds. We had our own group of 11 of us.
Yeah.
And we had it guided. So we had the comfort of knowing all the other people in the group. We were basically friends who have paddled before with the majority of the members of the group. But then you have the luxury of an outfitter doing all the grunt work. So to me, it was the best blend of both worlds, the friendship and the social aspects of people that you knew, and the luxury of having someone else prepare all the meals and do the guiding.
That is nice. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up unless somebody else wants to jump in and make a comment or two.
Maybe just one last question, if I could,
sure, John.
Gary. Just on that same note, are there any guided trips planned for this coming year through WCA?
Well, every member can launch a trip. Okay. I'm actually
sorry. I meant using a guide. So we were talking about self-guided versus fully guided. Do you know if there's any plan this year for fully guided?
Any member can launch a trip, which means you could say on your trip, I want to go in a guided trip. I need 5 more people or whatever you need. So you can invent a group that's doing a trip, but it's a guided trip. You don't have to have it self-guided just because you're launching a trip,
Gotcha. No, understood.
So
thank you.
The website is set up that any member can post. And, generally we don't want commercial organizations posting their trip. But if you're organizing and say, I'm trying to get 6 people or 4 people or, 12 people or whatever you want to get, you can organize that group and say, okay, we're going to go to wherever, ABC, and we want a guided trip, or we want it self-guided. You have to figure that out. But that's the beauty of the club. You can find these people. Now, the flip side of that is generally when you're going on one of these northern trips, you're trying to pick people so you've already tripped with them on a weekend or a week trip, or some trips that the people. So you have, okay, they're steady, they're solid. There's safety, we're getting up at, 8 o'clock and not 4 o'clock in the morning. You're picking individuals that are in your lifestyle, if you know what I mean. Because that's the danger when you go on these trips. You just can't have somebody, you've never tripped with before. They could be fantastic, but they want to wake up at 4 a.m. and you want to wake up at 8 a.m. That doesn't work. So you got to set your trip up. So it's like, okay, we're going to go 20K a day. We're going to go 50K a day. We're going to, whatever. You set it up so you're attracting the people you want to attract. Now, some people don't like posting trips. I know Isadora posted a trip for the Heart, and she got her 6 people. I think Jeff, you're in the audience here somewhere. Jeff Mead, you were on that trip. Depends on the person if they want to post like a serious trip like this. There are people that post just amongst their friends, but all their friends are WCA members. So it's one of those trade-offs. It's what you're comfortable with, basically. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
I would just add one comment, which is, for me and for several others on our group, this was a canoe trip of a lifetime. 23 days was the longest trip I've taken, certainly. And usually you go up on a 2-week trip or 1-week trip and you're just getting into it, and you're disappointed. Now you got to go home. But for 23 days, you don't have that anxiety or that fear. You look forward to another number of days on the water. The scenery was spectacular. Basically was 480 kilometers of nonstop mountains, beautiful scenery. We were fortunate we only saw 2 other parties the whole time. So we had basically peak season July, but we had the whole rivers to ourselves.
Yeah.
We didn't see anyone on the Broken Skull, and we saw 2 parties at Virginia Falls that we saw throughout the trip on the South Nahanni. But basically we had the whole place to ourselves, and that was a wonderful wilderness feeling. The guide certainly made it a luxury and a lot less effort on our part. So it had a very high enjoyment quotient, if I could say it that way. Less grunt work, more enjoyment. And that's the way this trip went. And it was an easy, leisurely pace, good whitewater, exciting things to see, beautiful scenery, great bunch of people. I couldn't have asked for a better canoe trip. It was literally canoe trip of a lifetime for me.
Yeah, I think one thing too is we're all getting older, so you can see there is an advantage going guided because you're getting older and the boat's getting heavier, and for some reason, I don't know. But that's an avenue to go down once you get to an age that you can't pick up the boat, you can't do things. So that's something to think about maybe.
How were the bugs on the river?
Yes, the bugs were excellent.
The bugs.
The Broken Skull, I don't think we really had any bugs. They were flying around, but nothing was biting us, I think. Anytime you do a hike, 0 bugs because you're climbing and it's a little windy. In camp, I would say the Broken Skull, there was not much at all.
No, very few.
When we got Nahanni and you get into those inner lakes like Rabbit Kettle, the bugs were stupid, but you just wear your bug jacket and you eat and you go in your tent. Or we had a bug tent, so we were in there a little bit too.
Why? That's surprising. You'd think there'd be a lot of bugs, but because it's not like Northern Ontario then.
Yeah, well, as we got lower and lower, like when we got the last camp on just above the last day of Nahanni, it was really buggy. And we were on a beach and there's like no way, you have to go in your tent basically. Yeah, I thought it was pretty crazy there. And I'll show you next week. I got a video of somebody's sock with about 40 bugs on it.
Hey Gary, I wonder if there's anything you do differently for people who are planning on going there again. Given your experience, anything you do differently in terms of there's some hikes that you wanted to do but missed for whatever reason. Some time you wanted to spend in different locations. What would you do different?
On the Broken Skull, nothing. We hit all the high points on the Broken Skull. If you go through the guide, we hit everything was in the guide, except, going for a 10K hike up a creek, but not many people would do that, I think. I would say on the Nahanni, so next week, we got to a ranger station and we weren't allowed to self-guide ourselves to this Tufa Mounds that was like about 2-3K hike. we had to have a ranger there because it was some agreement between the Denny, they consider this a sacred site, and they must have a guide lead you there. And unfortunately, there was weather that no planes came in for a few days. In fact, half the group was there, and the planes couldn't bring the rest of the group in. So there was a little bit of an issue at Rabbit Kettle with rangers weren't coming in because there was no flights, and nobody was coming into the lake to start their trip. So there was one group there, a couple leaders and a bunch of canoes, and they didn't have enough bodies for all the canoes they had, basically. So they ended up, after about 2 or 3 days, they daisy chained their canoes and went down the river. Don't know the full story on that, but
yeah, the rest flew in at Virginia Falls, so they towed 2-3 empty canoes down the upper South Nahanni until Virginia Falls, and then the rest of the group flew in to that location.
Yeah, and the South Nahanni is it's like a long lake. It's like it's moving, but it's class 0.5, you know, it's nothing really most of the way.
Okay.
But I'll tell you that next week.
Notice that you guys had spray skirts on the canoes. Did you feel you needed that?
No. In my opinion, we didn't need it on the Broken Skull, but you know, it's one of those things where you get a few splashes, but nothing that would swamp your canoe, you know. I would say on the Nahanni, when you do the Fort Canyon, which is the, you know, biggest water, yeah, it comes in handy there for sure. Because the issue is once you swamp on like the bottom end of the Nahanni, it's motoring the 10K an hour, and it's wide. It's like, you know, 80 meters wide or something, 100 meters wide, just going. So even if you got on shore on the side, you're just still motoring along. It's hard to get a foothold unless there's like a little gravel bar or something. But if you're in the canyon, you're just motoring along. But I'll tell you that next week.
That was one of the aspects of a guided trip. So again, they sort of called the shots. So they for example, in our fees, if you didn't have a dry suit, it included a wetsuit. And for the Broken Skull, most of the river, they said, okay, mandatory dry suits, wetsuits wasn't an option. That was their rules, obviously for safety reasons, right? And the same with the spray skirts. And it was only when we got onto the upper part of Nahanni where they said, okay, if you don't want to wear your wetsuit, dry suit, and you know, everybody took them off type of thing. And we didn't have to have the spray skirts for up until Virginia Falls. So it's just another aspect of the guide company, because they got their reputation, and the last thing that they want to do is have somebody with hypothermia halfway down the river or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Did you find the dry suits were necessary? Or would you, if you're going on a self-guided, would you bring a dry suit?
Yeah, I would bring it just because of safety aspect. Because when you wipe out, we didn't wipe out, but you could tell. I think Brian and JC wiped out on Broken Skull, so you ended up getting wet. But again, you just, you know, in a couple minutes, not 30 seconds, you're out of the water, right? And it's perfectly.
Yeah, pretty shallow, right? So you can just stand up.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't stand up, but you could swim, and you know, you get out like within a few seconds. Yeah, I would say if you're floating a lot and say the weather was bad, then it'd be a whole different story, because it was sunny and warm. It's not an issue. You're wet, but who cares, you know? Yeah. So
Gary, when did you start? When did you start this trip? When did you start?
July 1st.
July 1st?
Yeah. So I guess we started it 2 or 3 days before, got the White Horse, but the official trip, July 1st of this past year, and ended it on the 23rd. And the same thing, it ends on the 23rd officially on the water. And the next day we flew, you know, Yellowknife and home probably.
Is there, did they say anything about starting earlier? Is there any advantage to starting earlier?
I don't even know you can, because I think we were maybe the second group down the Broken Skull, because We did have, I think we saw some signs of somebody was there before us, just by rock placements and stuff. So it might have been one or two groups, because like I said, the ice just broke up 10 days before.
Okay.
You know, so you can't go, you know, there
Too
might
early.
not be a place to land if you go too early.
Right. Okay.
And I remember on Divide Creek, so Divide Lake, where you start the creek down to the Broken Skull, we were there, you know, pretty well at high water, and there was several times where we had to hop out, drag the canoe, get back in, and away we go. So going in late July, August, I think you'd be lining your boat or dragging your boat quite a bit in that first couple kilometers for sure.
Yeah, the first, well, the creek's 3K, you'd probably be dragging it for at least half, because there's like, you know, foot deep, 6 inches, foot deep, 6 inches. But I can see the water, once the snow melts, that's it, you know, the creeks are gonna dry up. Yeah. So listen, I'm gonna call it a night here. If you guys want to see part 2, Nahanni, it's on December the 13th, 7 p.m., same time, same channel. Just look at the website and you'll see the link. And if anybody wants the info I mentioned, just send me an email. And I will try to post this in the next week or so. So if you missed the first bit, you can go on YouTube and see what you missed. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Gary.
Yep, bye.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Yep, you too. Bye.